Iris, Fraser, Cairo. Am I saying that right? Cairo?
Zero.
Hero, my bad. My
No,
bad.
don't worry. I've been called worse, man.
Where's the name from?
Uh, my dad's from Italy, but he was like everybody else after World War II and went to Argentina. So like it's kind of
Gotcha.
like it's Cito in like Spanish, but in Italian it's Cheeto, like Cheeto and mobile.
Okay.
So depending on who you like is talking, it's pronounced a million different ways.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Dave, Abs, what's up, guys?
Johnny,
Mikey V, what's happening?
chilling. What's up, Zero?
Hey, how you doing,
Jacob,
man?
doing well, man.
It's good to see you.
Been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Likewise. Like it was
Yeah.
we had a long chat last time we talked.
Yeah. Back when I was in Toronto.
Yeah, what's it called? I completely forgot that you are you now still out there in Canada or
No,
no?
no, no, I'm
Back.
in Portland.
All right, that's what I thought because I knew I was telling you about Henry because he was out in Montreal at the time. That's
Yeah. Is he still there?
no, so I mean he's going back, but like the sea is it's not worth staying there all year round. So I think he's right now doing some sort of like NGO thing in Brazil, while like still like working with Montreal, but he's going back, I think, in the next month or so because he's already been ramping up like scouting and stuff because they're putting together their team for next year.
Nice.
Oh,
All right. Well, we're gonna get started here. So, welcome to the 2025 Get in the Game 101 NBA trade deadline course. Awesome to have you all. We're excited to meet you. Like I said in some of my messages, but this is the most immersive experience we've had in our course. So we're excited. You'll meet Yossi and Kendra here tonight. Yossi will be handling the salary cap for us, and Kendra will be doing the medical. So our goal for Getting the Game 101 is, all of you, I'm assuming, want to work in the NBA, want to work in basketball, and we want to do our best to help make that a reality for you. One of the main things in courses like this is getting to know each other. So like your classmates, me, Mikey V, Bjorn, our other guest speakers who come on, like everyone is here to support you guys and support you on your journey. We want you guys to have success. And so, take advantage of those, meet people, connect, and we'll do our best. If you tell me like, hey, I want to be a Dobo one day, I want to do it like, I want to be in analytics, like we'll do our best to connect you with people in the industry. Appreciate you all, investing in this course and in your time. And then, each course we have, we do four throughout the year. We build it around a timeline or event. The trade deadline is obviously one that can be very immersive, which is fun. So each of you have your NBA team, and we'll kind of go through the process today of what that'll look like. But basically, you guys will be able to go ahead and start making trades and doing things, and we'll build the class around that. But I'm gonna introduce a couple guys to you who always help out with Getting the Game 101. So Bjorn Zetterberg, of the Portland Trailblazers, of the Orlando Magic, analytics, scouting, Cerebro Sports, cleaning the glass. He's been in everything. Bjorn, talk to us, brother.
Hey, what's going on, guys? As Johnny mentioned, I've worn a lot of hats in my time. Spent 7 years with Portland on the analytics and scouting side. A couple seasons with the Orlando Magic, again on the analytics scouting side. A couple years as a consultant, and now I'm coming up on 2 years with Cerebro. But yeah, really excited to have you guys here. A few that I know, a few that I've helped bring in, and yeah, really looking forward to the class. I've known John. I think we're coming up on like 15 years here. I've known Mikey for over 10. I've known Kendra, I think probably close to 10. So it's a really good crew of people and getting to know Yossi, Jacob, a lot of really good staff. So you guys are in good hands.
Yeah, thanks, Bjorn. And Bjorn's gonna, like I said, we have Cerebro Sports. You guys are all having accounts. I know Bjorn sent that out to you. And he'll do a training with you guys today. And when you put your trades together and stuff, in the NBA, one of the things we always do is, you're selling a trade to your ownership, basically, like when you want to make a move. So, one of the things we do is we put together booklets and I was a video coordinator and scout, and so I would do a lot of video scouting, put together packages to sell the owner player. So, one, I know everyone's timeline is different and what you have time for. So, we want it to be as immersive as possible for you. If you're like, I'm raising kids and I have time to do like the Slack trade chatter, but I don't have time to do deep dives, that's okay. It's whatever you can put into it. But Cerebro is a tool, you'll be able to use. And, if you want to put together, packets of your trades and what you've done and why you've done it, those are things that, can go with a resume and can go as content you can send to me and Bjorn and Mikey V. We can look at them for you, and if we can get them in the right hands as well. So if you have if you want to do deep dives on the tools you have here, and then actually do the whys and why nots of you made moves, I think that's a great thing to be able to do. Jacob, who I'll introduce here in a little bit, he did the same thing with some NBA rosters for our training camp course and following teams throughout the year. And he did a great job, and we were able to get that to some NBA personnel to look at what he was doing and everything. And so always encourage that. Next guy I want to introduce, Mikey V. He's been with us since the beginning as well. He does a lot of scouting from grassroots level, middle school, high school, college, NBA, a little bit of everything. But Mikey V, awesome to see you here.
Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, just my start with basketball. Um, been a fan for most of my life. Growing up in Toronto, had family in Portland, Oregon. So yeah, I went to just about every hoop summit in Portland since the event's been happening there, and got involved with a website called NBADraft.net. Wrote for them for quite a while, and then covered the Hoop Summit and the practices and a few other events with them. And that's, how I was first introduced to John and Bjorn and a number of other people in basketball, and including the person that runs Pro Insight, Matt McKay Jr. And I've been helping Matt McKay with Pro Insight since May 2019. We focus on grassroots mostly. Still go to a few college basketball games, and my Twitter name is NBA Draft Mikey V. So that was obviously my origins were interest in prospects and the process of people coming up. But yeah, just cover a lot of things on the grassroots side. So I've seen a lot of players in the NBA when they were in high school and going through that process, and or playing professionally overseas, lots of other paths to the NBA. So yeah, just been doing that for quite a while. Johnny helped us out with the camp. We got a lot closer after that. He came up with the idea of the NBA draft cohort, and we've been going ever since. So just glad to be part of getting the game 101. And yeah, anybody want to talk basketball or ask me any questions, I'm here.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mikey. And Mikey brought up, we both brought up Pro Insight. Bjorn's done some stuff Pro Insight as well. We probably had 10 of our students who've done scouting with Pro Insight now. So that's another, if you're into scouting, same thing, we would love to help you get connected. All right, next guy I'm going to introduce you to, Jacob Sutton. Jacob, signed up for a course. We got to know each other through Getting the Game 101. He has a Substack that is off the charts. Recommend everyone checking it out. He's built our website and done a lot of things, and he's going to be managing a few of the extra teams for us as well. So, Jacob, if you got anything you want to shout out, go for it.
Yeah, thanks, John. Like John said, I signed up for a course. I think we got connected through Substack originally. I just kind of started a newsletter because a friend was going to be like on some sort of mission trip, and he was like, "Oh, I'll only have access to email." And we were both NBA fans. He was like, "Oh, write a newsletter." I was like, "Oh yeah, heck yeah!" And then it just kind of grew from there. And I don't even know why it's as. It's got maybe close to 1,000 subscribers, which is weird for me because I'm not a writer, but apparently I am. But yeah, like John said, I made the Get in the Game 101 website. I've just been super happy to, take part in what John's doing, because it's really trying to accomplish something greater than what any one of us can do, on our own, is trying to get everybody into basketball and do what they want to do for their dreams. So I've loved being a part of it. Bjorn, Mikey V, all these guys are great guys. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacob. And yes, one thing Jacob mentioned about, his Substack and everything. And I do recommend, like, as you guys are putting together work samples and things and getting ready for your careers in basketball, of putting your work out on display, whether it's on Substack or Twitter or LinkedIn. People literally get jobs from those places where their work is accessible. I'm sure Bjorn will share his story later, but Bjorn was someone like that who put his work online. Ben Falk, who you guys might know from Cleaning the Glass. We all worked together in Portland, but Ben saw his stuff and reached out to him and hired him. And so, we know tons of people who've gotten hired through putting their work out there. And so, same thing, we are happy to help guide you in your work and get you set up as best as possible. And I'm gonna kick it over to my guy Joe here. Joe is he took a course with us a couple years, our first ever course, I believe, the NBA draft cohort, and he's interning with us, so he's helping put together some of the salary sheets and things that are being sent out to you. And he's gonna be, working with Yossi to make sure, things are all set for you guys. And so, Joe, kick it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, John. Appreciate it. Good to be here. And like Jacob said, just getting the game's got a great mission that glad to be a part of. And yeah, I was a part of the first ever draft class. It was in 2022, so it's crazy how time flies. But I remember there's a really good turnout there, and still some of the people I met there, I still keep in touch with. Just great people to know in basketball, and just love being a part of getting the game, and glad to be here. So looking forward to this course.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. No, appreciate all your work you're putting into it. Yeah, we got a handful of other people who aren't here live at the moment, but that are, obviously you'll be making trades with and able to contact. And then, the extra teams, Jacob, and then Joe and Alex Burns, who was our intern last year and who's an assistant coach in basketball this year with the college team. They're going to handle some of the extra teams. So, feel free to reach out, but we'll have a list of what that looks like and everything. So we're going to kick it over to our first guest speaker, who's going to be with us throughout the course here and helping you guys with a lot of salary dynamics. He's one of the foremost NBA salary cap experts in the world. We're thrilled to have him as part of the course. And Yossi, thanks for being here. And I'll let you tell a little bit of your story, how you got involved in basketball, and what you're up to now.
Hey everyone, do I sound okay?
Sound great.
Okay. And I just want to make sure this all works. So yeah, my name is Yossi. I've been a salary cap expert or analyst I started it about 7 years ago. I just picked it up, started learning all the rules, doing my own spreadsheets, and that evolved over time where I started out just freelance writing for USA Today. Eventually got the attention of Hoops Hype, that was with them for 4 years. And that was a great experience, got me a lot of exposure. And over the years, also did some consulting work for various agents. And yeah, now I'm just on my own, doing my own thing. And I mean, that's more or less my story. I've been doing, so I'll be processing the trades, helping you guys out, get them through the finish line. I've done several like similar type stuff, like with SBC, for example. Uh, so yeah, I guess that's most of it.
No, that's great. And so kind of in these classes, anytime if I'm talking, Bjorn's talking, any of us, just feel free to put the raise your hand button. These classes are driven by you all. So anytime you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll scoot over to you whenever we can. So with that, we'll open up for questions. You have questions about the salary cap, what Yossi does, feel free to ask them. And, while you're coming up with your questions, I'll dive into a little bit of, obviously on the Slack channel. I would assume you're all on there because that's where I sent the link. So appreciate you guys getting set up on there. Obviously, we have the trade course. That's where I'm going to put like the links to the class. We'll have a unlisted YouTube link, so that's just for you guys. So we'll post the classes after if you want to rewatch anything, or for those who weren't able to be there live. And then we have some other channels that you guys will be able to check into. One is NBA Trade Chatter. So that's where, you guys can say, this is what I'm looking for, or is this person available? Obviously, you can DM each other on here, but you can also just use the Trade Chatter to blast a message to everyone. We have NBA Trade Medical. So that'll be kind of questions for Kendra, if you want to make those open-ended, for a learning experience. If you're like, what should we do with Joel Embiid? How are these injuries going to affect, the next 3 years of his career? Drop those questions in there. She's excited to give you guys feedback and so you can ask those questions there. And then below that, we've got the NBA trade salary, and that'll be same thing, like questions for Yossi, salary wise. And then he'll let us know once once you two of y'all, or three, four, however you make your trades, you'll send those to Yossi. I'll let Yossi talk about, the best process of that happening. And then he'll formalize the trades to let you know that this actually works, or here's a reason it doesn't. And again, that just helps in the learning process. So Yossi, what do you have to add to that?
So we're using Slack. So I would say the best. I'm sure I haven't checked. Do we have a Slack channel specifically for like announcing when trades are done?
Yeah, well, I'll make a trade announcement one. Yeah.
So I suppose best thing is just message you. Whenever you finish something, message me. I'll process it on my end, and if it's fine, I will I'll let you guys know that it's good to go, and just get it processed as soon as possible so that can reflect for whatever, so everyone else can, because then once that, cause, so that can just be reflected, and then if there's something wrong or something off, I'll just message you guys back, let you know what it is, how you give a suggestion how to modify it.
Yeah, so there's a section on the Slack channels, approved trades. So you'll still put the approved trades there, and then Joe will be adjusting the Google Doc for like teams and salaries and all of those things as they come through. So yeah, no, appreciate it, Yossi. All right. One, I'm gonna encourage you guys to ask some questions again while we got Yossi here with the cap. But Yossi, with the new CBA the last couple years, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen with NBA teams and how they're behaving based on some of the changes to the most recent CBA?
So the biggest thing is the apron restrictions, and not half, but like almost half the league right now, or maybe like 8 or 9 teams are over the aprons, and then maybe 6 are over the tax. So a lot of teams have these restrictions where even if if you're a team that's over the apron, you're gonna have to make sure you're decreasing salary in the trades, and you're not aggregating. If you're over the second apron, stuff like that. But also if you're a team that's like barely like hovering around the tax, a team like a Memphis or a New Orleans that realistically they're not going to want to finish over the tax, would definitely recommend you in the same manner work with those restrictions where they're in real life they're going to want to not increase payroll. So the best thing to help get around that is try to work with each other, try to do multi-team trades. The more teams that are involved, the more likely every team can get around all their specific restrictions. And I think we're seeing it a lot more common in real life since this new CBA got implemented. And yeah, part of it is just there's also just happens to be a lot of expensive teams more than ever right now, but that is the workaround.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that too. I mean, multi-team deals have. I feel like each CBA they increase because each CBA gets more complicated, and so you have to pull in other teams to make things happen. I mean, I think, obviously, and Yossi's done a lot of. You check out his YouTube, but just the Jimmy Butler situation is Bradley Beal. Like those are really fascinating where guys used to just force their way out to wherever they wanted to go, and that's over. Like it's really fascinating the dynamics right now. Jacob, what do you got?
Yeah, thanks, John. Yossi, thanks for handling the whole salary cap thing for this course and all that. I was reading one of your articles recently about the new era of draft pick management and stuff, and I guess kind of going on the apron restrictions you were just talking about, where if a team is on the second apron, they can't use the mid-level exception, right? How do you think the value of a draft pick, specifically first rounder, is now in the new CBA versus the old CBA based on, you know, it's harder to keep players on a roster for long periods of time?
In some ways, they should be more valuable because of the restrictions where now teams have less, expensive teams have less means uh, to increase your payroll, especially if you're already pretty close to the apron. But they also made it much easier for teams below them to easily run up their payroll, use exceptions, use them as trade exceptions. So I guess it just depends who you're dealing with. Like we just saw the Jazz take a late Suns pick because the Suns have these restrictions, and I mean, I'm sure you all understand why that pick is so perceived as so valuable. But at the same time, if you're like a team like the Jazz or the Thunder, they already have so many first round picks. Now they're being a little more realistic where the Jazz they can't realistically make selections with all these picks, so they traded a bunch for one. So now it seems like teams are more valuing instead of the quantity, specific ones that they think can be not necessarily ones that will convert into a high selection because 31, 6 years from now, the best thing the Jazz can do right now is get that pick, and then maybe in 2, 3 years from now the Suns do crash, and then okay, now all of a sudden you have a super valuable pick. Maybe another team will give you more than what you paid for it, and by then the Jazz could be good and they could be ready to do something. So, yeah. So, to answer it, I think for the most part it's increased. The value of first round picks will increase. We're not seeing it right now because some teams are still giving them away. But the imbalance of how there's so few teams with so many picks will eventually that's gonna come to head where like those once there are so many teams without anything left to do, then those teams like that Thunder and Jazz, their picks will increase in value once there needs to be some kind of like swing of the pendulum, so to speak, of like some of these teams are going to need their picks back.
Right.
They're going to have to give up something for it.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
Tyrus.
Hey,
All
Tyrus.
right. Hey, Yoshi. Hey, so how do teams decide when to use exceptions like the mid-level exception or biannual exception versus keeping the cap space open?
So this is the first year where these exceptions are being used as trade exceptions. So we've
Uh,
started to see more teams preserve them. Now, part of it is this was just a bad free agency market and the cap barely went up. So a lot of role players got squeezed. So a lot of teams just decided, combination of that, they may not have felt there's anyone really worth to pursue with it. That also, they might as well hold on to it for closer to the trade deadline. So it's gonna be so now we're seeing like a real change in how this is gonna work. We don't know if this is gonna like exactly how it's gonna be, but now like there's like maybe 10 teams that have the full mid-level exception that reserved it into the season. We'll see just if that ended up how strategic that ended up being. Um, Chances are most of these teams won't do anything with it, but there's there's so much spending power now between for teams that are below the aprons. They get the mid-level, the biannual. They can re-sign their players with bird rights. They have trade exceptions that they might have rolled over. and they made the trade exceptions looser, so it's much easier to increase your payroll in the trade. That it's like you can't really use a lot of these teams aren't going to even need to use all that stuff nowadays. I
Right.
think that's how I like. I've seen like the biannual exception get used less and less. Like maybe one team a year uses it now. So um,
Okay.
my predictions that teams are going to try reserving it more and more over these next few years now that they can be trade exceptions. Um, Especially if they feel like if they already have a full roster set or uh, they already have their means to make their team deeper with players they could resign or trade for, then very possible they just become trade exceptions for the most part.
Okay. Got you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Hopefully, is it Kiro?
0.
0.
Kiro.
Yeah.
Okay. My bad. I'm
No,
getting
dude.
each
No, you're
time.
good. You're good, man. Don't worry. What's up, Yossi?
What's up?
I wanted to know about like the minutia that like supposedly if you are a second apron team, if you can aggregate salaries, but allegedly if you aggregate them for a trade that gets you below the apron, that is possible, as like people have said with like, for example, Pat Connington with Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis in that situation. If they weren't doing a separate trade beforehand to get below, if supposedly they can do a whole multi-team trade to get that done. Is that true, or how does that work?
So I might even make like a video just for this, like a PSA, just about how there's a lot of confusion on what aggregation means, because I think a lot of people, they think aggregation means just trading two players together. And that's not at all aggregation is when you're combining their salaries to get a more expensive one. So the first part of your question is yeah, the Bucks, like for example, they can aggregate in the same deal as long as they finish below the second apron. That's fine. They don't have to like do a two-part trade. But then, for example, there's like the Suns, where last week I put out a hypothetical where they trade Beal for Butler, but then they're also sending out Ryan Dunn. And that's not aggregation. You can send out, it's like doing two trades, but simultaneously at the same time. They're doing Beal for Butler, which works on their end, but then they just happen to be sending out Ryan Dunn uh as well. Because they're not combining those two players to get Butler. It's unnecessary.
So like a separate transaction kind of
you
in
yeah, you can just consider like a second transaction in one. I think there's like a term for it. It's like simultaneous, non-simultaneous. That's what they call it in the CBA. So like when you really dissect real life trades, you'll notice it's like a lot of the times teams are actually doing like two or three trades just in one big transaction. So that'll be something when you guys make your trades. I'll outline that, because I'm also I'm gonna get really deep into it where you guys might generate a trade exception, for example. You might not realize it. And it might be because you happen to done separate trades that helps do that. So as you guys get into these, sending them over, I'll try to help you like understand those distinctions.
Sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, that's awesome, Yossi. Noah, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm still pretty new to understanding contracts, so please excuse this question if it's a little basic. But I did some research prior to the course, and I noticed that like the Suns are like $70 million over the salary cap. How are teams allowed to be, if there's a salary cap, how are you allowed to be $70 million? I know there's like penalties, but is the reward like greater than the risk of being penalized? I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around it.
So once you start doing all this and you start like once you start getting into the trades and stuff, like so I have my website capsheets.com, and it's organized much differently than most other sites, because most sites, I think what they do is like they put the payroll together and then they show you the cap space and then they show you like the luxury tax and whatever that stuff. And I think that I like to do it a little differently where you're getting first I like to talk about, okay, what are you doing with your payroll first? And what does that mean for your tax? What does that mean for the apron? And then I get into the cap space thing because the salary cap in the NBA, it's a soft cap. So the only the all it really means is if you're well below it, then you have the means to sign players like the Sixers just did. They were able to get Paul George, pay him a max contract. Most teams uh, don't operate with that generally. They operate over the cap. So you're allowed to exceed the salary cap when you re-sign your own players if they have certain forms of bird rights. You're allowed to exceed the cap to use an exception, a trade exception to sign your draft picks, as many minimum players as you want, as long as you're not subjected to any hard cap or you're not like exceeding it if you're subjected to it. So the whole cap space thing, it's just like all for teams with low payrolls, they can strategically position themselves to have to be so well below it that they can then sign whatever free agents are available or make some imbalanced trades. But once these teams do it, then you get to go over it with those means I explained, which is mainly bird rights, signing exceptions if you have any minimum signings. So, yeah, the NFL I think is kind of a hard cap, but also I think it's also kind of not. From what I understand, like teams can roll over cap space in the NFL from previous years, so it's like each team I guess has their own salary cap limit. I don't know, I never got into it, but the NBA, it's uh the actual salary cap. Like you make a good point. Maybe they could even consider changing the name a little bit instead of cap. It's like I don't know the cap space limit. Just so I don't know, but because then once you get to like the first apron, second apron, those are actually the hard limits that most teams can't really surpass.
Okay, so context is important when looking at those numbers blindly. You got to kind of consider if you're re-signing a player or these exemptions and different things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, usually when teams have cap space, they can't, they might not be able to run up their payroll so high. There's like, because usually when you have cap space, all you have left is the room at level, which this year was 8 million. But then the Sixers, they, they they were like more strategic about it where they had all this cap space, but they also kept Tyrese Maxey's cap hold, which was really low. And that's like a whole nother thing. I don't want to get too into it, but like they have these placeholder numbers that interfere with the cap space amount. But as long as you keep it, then you could go over the cap to re-sign him. So they did that with him and KJ Martin. So they're in the tax, which is pretty rare to go from having cap space to being in the tax. So ideally, nowadays, teams want to, if they're going to have cap space, they want to try to position themselves to be able to make the roster as deep as possible with doing stuff like that.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, good stuff. And one thing just to add on, like with NBA teams, like, the tax and what you're like the owner basically determines that. So the owner of the team will tell the GM, we have to be under the tax, we can go over, we can go over the apron. It's all determined by, and that's where, Phoenix Suns were always habitually under the tax, and then they got a new owner. It's like, let's skyrocket over it. And with the Blazers, when I was with the Trailblazers, we would go over, like Paul Allen, who was our owner, was willing to, back then you could buy first round picks. He was always buying picks and doing whatever, going over the cap. And to me, that's why the Trailblazers had such a, extended run of success as a small market team. And then as soon as Paul passed away, the team has been garbage because especially as a smaller market, you have to be willing to make those sacrifices to compete when you can't get free agents. And so ownership determines a lot of what you're able to do as a GM. Obviously, for our exercise where you're the GMs, you can decide what you want to do with your franchises. But yeah, in the NBA, the GMs, it's tough. The jobs are interesting because obviously they're going to take all the heat if things don't work out, but a lot of times they're hamstrung where the team might be playing well and you're competing for the playoffs and the owner goes get under the tax at the deadline. And so you got to trade someone. So sometimes you'll probably notice even the trade deadline, there'll be a few trades that don't make sense. Where you're like, why did that guy get moved? And wasn't he playing well? And a lot of times it's just the owner says, hey, we have to do this thing. And then with that, the owners also have relationships with players. And so there's a lot of players on the team where the owner will be like, but you can't trade that guy. I like this player. Again, you're hamstrung. Then you might have to trade a player that you as the GM slash the coach likes, but the owner, or I can go back to my example with the Trailblazers where the last cut of our team one time, our coaching staff loved Ime Udoka, but the owner loved draft picks, and so the owner is like, "No, we're going to keep our second round pick," which turned out to be good because it was Patty Mills, who turned out to be a great player for us. But the coaching staff liked Ime. So Ime got caught in a couple times with Portland, where one time they got rid of him because the GM drafted Martell Webster, and they knew the coaching staff would play Ime, so they got rid of him because they wanted Martell to play. And then the next time, Ime kind of got on the outs because the owner wanted the second round pick. So there's always these little things that owners have a lot of. Obviously, they have a lot of power, control, but they kind of push that on the GM to make certain things happen or not happen. So when you see curious trades that are made, I would always kind of like look up to ownership and kind of see what you can dig around and find there. Mikey V.
Yossi, have a question. I thought Noah, it was really interesting with your take on the salary cap and the value of being over the salary cap. What have you found is like typically the amount that like a championship team is over the salary cap, and like what I was trying to look this up just like based on that thought. What is the lowest salaried team like based on the cap to have won an NBA championship?
Oh, I mean, I'd have to look. You're talking about just like ever, or just like maybe within once they started doing luxury tax stuff?
Yeah, I would say once they started doing luxury tax stuff, it's probably too difficult to find even before then. Um, because I feel like it was also like more of a hard cap back in the day as well. But yeah.
I Yeah, one I could probably just tell you like what were some of the most efficient champions like who didn't pay tax, but
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah,
I might have to get back to you on that
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
sometime
yeah.
later this
Just
week.
I I've just always been like, of course, I think with cap strategy and everything, you want to have the best possible value to go along with how much you're winning. So
I
yeah.
think I might have an answer. Well, like a good answer, the Warriors in 2017, but that's kind of,
2017. 2017.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when they got KD, because that's when the 2016 cap spike happened,
Yeah.
which is kind of BS, but it
Yeah, yeah,
happened.
yeah, yeah.
Every team except for like two or three
Had
had cap
Steph's
space.
new extension kicked in yet during
No,
that
he was
year?
still on that like
Oh,
$11 million
okay. So
a
that's
year
why.
deal.
Yeah, exactly.
He was making like 11 million.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Draymond and Clay they've gotten paid, but
Yeah.
once the spike happened, those deals look like really small.
Yeah.
And they saw Iguodala. Yeah, same thing. His deal started to look really small. So they got Durant. They had this deep roster. They won, no, they didn't go. No,
67,
73-9
right?
was the year before. But either way, they won 15 and 16 and
67,
1
I
in the
think. Yeah.
playoffs, and they didn't pay any tax because they had cap space, and it's really hard to get into the tax when
That's wild.
your payroll's already that low to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. Steph's contract, his second deal, like I think was what led to their dynasty. So
Yeah, that was that 100%. That was like, who could have thought that'd be the best contract ever?
yeah, thank you. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really curious just what the amount over the cap usually like a playoff team would have, or like something along those lines as well. Like, yeah, just the value to the wins.
I never like calculated anything like that, but I'd have that might be something I look into in the future.
Thanks, Yossi.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, good stuff. Bjorn, what do you got?
Yeah, so it's funny to me, like, a lot of people come up like watching the game and want to get into like video and scouting. I'm kind of curious, like, what's your background? Like, what made you say, like, I want to get into the accounting and the cap side of it? What drew you to that?
Um, so you don't need, I'll just say like you don't need to be all that good at math to get into this. Like I did get to like calculus and stat, but I wasn't like amazing at that. All you need is like pre-algebra for the most part for this. Um, but I just felt like growing up, I always felt like I was very passionate about like what a front office does, the decisions they make. I was always I always had like opinions on what a team does and the direction they're in. And always like I'm sure all of us do, we like to make fake trades. And then when I won, I just around 2017, 2018, I decided, like I understand the NBA like pretty well, a little better than like like average. I should start doing something with it. And the reason I just picked the cap was mainly I decided if I'm gonna be like analyzing transactions and stuff, I should probably understand like the cap a little more and actually make sure that whatever I'm proposing makes sense. So I don't know, I just fell into it and I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. Started making my own spreadsheets my own way and I just did it. And I didn't think I'd really like fall in love with it, but yeah, I really enjoyed doing this. And like I said in the beginning, I'm just fortunate it evolved into this little thing I've got going on, and I get to talk about it all the time and teach people about it.
Absolutely. No, that's really cool. No, were you a lot of this stuff like self-taught? Like, did you take a class? Like, are you like reading like the full-on CBA yourself? Or are you kind of like leaning more on like synopses or notes as you go through? Like,
Yeah, everything was self-taught. I didn't like I considered going to SBC, but at the time it was too expensive for me, even though it's more expensive now. But even then, so I just mainly would like look at the FAQ all the time, which now is pretty outdated. But there's that. Then just kind of figuring out my own ways to memorize things. Like I really like hoopsrumors.com and that now like I feel like their glossary is probably the one of the best resources for simplified salary cap info. I'll still use it today if I forget a little something. I need a little reminder. I read the CBA one time, took me like 3, 4 months, but I never really like read it like reread it again. I didn't read the 2023 CBA. And really, but for the most part, I would say then there's like a bunch of little nuances that maybe if any of you have tried processing trades or like analyzing stuff as it happens, you might miss a little something. And that just takes time, these little nuances, because they don't really like explain it explicitly in the CBA or in the FAQ or anything like that. And that mostly comes when you're doing your own cap sheets. If you do your own cap sheets, that's how like you learn the most from that because then you're actually like you have the resources to actually have the numbers in front of you, put stuff together, And that's what I learned the most, like that way, because then I could really understand, okay, what did I get wrong? Uh, and then the more you get better at that, the more your mind can open up to actually like maybe come up with some really cool creative trades. So I would say you need, yeah, like practicing your own sheets is a must, but also like an enthusiasm for it. Like I'm not an accountant. I'm not, that's not what I do on a full-time basis, but this is just an aspect of it because I love just because I love the NBA and like the whole front office transactions aspect. I just really like it. So if you can really enjoy it as well, that'll help.
Very cool. Awesome. Thanks, Yossi.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and he hit on a couple of things we always talk about at our classes, but as you guys are looking to get work in the NBA and basketball, the thing I always say is to follow your passion and enjoy the journey, which Yossi mentioned both of those things. There's so many avenues to work in the NBA now. Like when I came in the NBA, basically to get an internship, um, you needed to be either a video coordinator or basketball operations intern. We usually had two internships. And now teams will have, 15 to 20 entryways between like all the analytics and coding and medical and health and player development. And, there's just so many routes, salary cap. We would have interns just in the summer that were salary cap interns just to come in. And so, like, with that, like Yo said, what are you passionate about? Because you need to have like a skill or something to offer an NBA team. And I guess the thing that always comes up for me is a lot of people who want to get into salary caps things, they'll like think they need to go to law school. One, law school is a great thing if you're passionate about it. Law school is not a great thing if you're not passionate about it. And so, whatever route you're looking, make sure you're passionate about it. And that's where you will become an expert in it because you enjoy learning about it. And that's when people start, asking you to consult and work and you get opportunities because you're good at it, because you enjoy it. So that's what I encourage for all of you, as you're whatever route of basketball you're in, like find your passions and dive into that. Ciro.
Yossi, real quick, what's a part of the CBA outside of trades that maybe you still find yourself confusing or just that it has like weird nuances that make it kind of complex to understand?
Um, hmm. I'd have to think on that a little more, but like, yeah, there's a couple things now and then. I think the thing that really I just dread having to remember is the Gilbert Arenas provision, the one where so 2 years ago when Austin Reeves was about to become a free agent, uh, the Lakers were in a position to potentially have another team give him a max level-ish contract where it would start him out in the 2 years at the mid-level exception, but then the last years would be around the max. And there's like very explicit like calculation of what how each of those salaries are calculated. And it's something that like I had to kind of like remember, and it's very complicated, but also it's not that important because it never really it's like that never happens. The last, I think the only time something like that was handed out was like in 2016 to like Tyler Johnson or something. Um, and so there's just like there's some overly complicated stuff like that. Nuances, I'd have, I don't know. It's hard to, I can't really think of any at the moment, to be honest. But if there's anything, as throughout the week I'll remember, I'll bring it up.
Sweet. Thanks, man.
Awesome. We have a couple questions coming in from Brett, who's international professional athlete, and so he's sent in some questions. How do you, all right, that's one's for Bjorn. How do teams put a value on other teams' draft picks? I've had trouble imagining what picks are considered valuable besides the more obvious. Example, we already talked about, but the Suns pick at 31 that they just traded is valuable because the Suns are all in now. But what about other teams who maybe don't know what they will do, how good their team will be in 1 to 2 years? So how do you, Yossi, how do you see teams putting a value on picks?
So this one I can't really answer because I'm sure every team, especially like the better front offices, have their own different research methods to figuring that stuff out. Uh, but like a general rule of thumb, you can always look at time. The more time a pick has, the more you can do something with it. So like the best analogy is like options trading, where you're like getting these contracts and you have this time on it, and uh, like as you get closer to it and they're getting closer to expire, then they lose the intrinsic value. So so what I kind of brought this up earlier, where like the Jazz, they got this pick that's very far out. So the idea is not necessarily they're trying to make a selection with it, but that there's going to be a moment, maybe in a year or two or three, where it's going to be more valuable because something happened to the sun. So uh, there's that aspect. So if you're looking at that, it like any far out pick is good. But yeah, as far as like I trying to identify why a certain pick is good, like it's pretty obvious why the Suns pick is going to be perceived as good, but maybe the Jazz have some other methods that they have that like come up with some metric to determine that this pick is like so far and above more valuable than any other future draft pick. So that's something that I guess it's like more or less proprietary. I wouldn't know where to begin, uh, who to ask.
Yeah, just to piggyback, it's really interesting. It's something you'll notice at the trade deadline, but the teams that have secure front offices make the shrewd deals. And the teams that, I mean, Sacramento, once they started winning, which was great, I was happy for them to start winning, but they started making even more win now moves, including, they traded what was it, a swap for DeRozan in that
Yeah.
swap. And so it's just like now all of a sudden Fox wants out and you've been moving picks and you go, what do we do now? Are we going to try to win with DeRozan Sabonis or are we going to tank out? And so you put yourself into, whereas, the Spurs, and they did it, I think, with Minnesota in the Dillingham deal, where Minnesota has been making win now moves, and the Spurs are like, cool, we're gonna accumulate, and obviously the Thunder, we're gonna accumulate all of everyone's picks and everyone's swaps in the future. We already know we're gonna be good in the future. We're not gonna have high picks, but now we will. We're gonna have high picks, and so you see that, but that's Presti, Popovich. So you see the teams that were when the management and the coaching staff and everyone knows, hey, we're here. This is our team. We're not like mercenaries, which most teams operate as, you're there a few years and you're gone. But the teams who are there long term, and I mean, I love the NFL draft and everything, but Belichick did that for years, where he was always trading his third round pick for next year's second round pick. It was always just trading the next year one up, one up, one up. And that stuff accumulates. And so it's been really interesting. Obviously, we've seen the Spurs and Thunder doing that. And I think Utah's trying to do that. And so and it's all the teams with the secure front offices who aren't afraid to, do a pick for, 5 years out or whatever in those scenarios. So yeah, like I said, it's case by case basis with teams, but really fascinating to watch that unfold. All right, we had one more question, Yossi, and we'll let you get out of here, but also from Brett. And I know you talked about it a little bit with Bjorn, but what are some good self-study tools or exercises to practice the job of a salary cap specialist?
Yeah, tool resources. Like I said, I think the most simplified resource for rules is Hoops Rumors. I always go to that, the glossary. If you're just like if you're trying to memorize stuff or you're trying to recall something, I like their website a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of other resources out there. That's just the one I always like to use the most. But yeah, like as far as doing the actual math, you just gotta, I think you gotta practice your own sheets and try to look back in history and see like always like it's good to review transactions. Like I remember 2018 when I started, I was trying to learn something about how trades work, and I went back and looked at what the Clippers Chris Paul Rockets trade because that trade was like really complicated because like the timing of it also allowed the Rockets to get have the mid-level exception to get PJ Tucker. Otherwise, like they had to do it at like right before the new salary cap year rolled in. So like even though I didn't have the sheets or the like of last year, I still kind of like reverse engineered, so to speak, to understand. And then and then I learned more about how trades work, and I'm able to reinforce my understanding of it. So try practicing your own sheets. I feel like I have a pretty good blueprint on capsheets.com. I'm like a nice way to look at a spreadsheet and to as simple as possible, make sure you're abiding by the tax and aprons and all that, and just like analyze transactions and like look at all the trades that happened this year, the off season, previous years, and use it as a sort of way where like when you did math homework back in middle school, they give you like problems. It's like that. Consider it like that. Those are the problems, and there you can see exactly like how that trade worked and what trade exception was generated and how it was allowed, all that stuff.
Awesome. Yossi, thanks so much for being here with us. It's great to have you a part of the course. Me and Yossi also met at the Arizona State Trade Deadline Conference. And I mean, just again, talking about to you guys about your passions, your interests. Yossi got invited because he became passionate and expert in salary cap. I didn't get invited from my time with the Trailblazers. I got invited from getting the game 101 because I like to write. And so you start writing articles and helping people. And so all these things, following your passions and doing those leads to opportunities and it leads. And one of the things I always say that the most important things is the relationships you make with each other in the class, with us. And like, me and Yossi met and just kept in touch since then. And awesome to have you here. And we'll see Yossi next week. And we'll be active on the Slack channel. But Yossi, before you take off here, any words of wisdom, life advice you would leave with us?
I don't just general life advice.
Yeah, it can be anything.
Uh, I would say, yeah, like you were just mentioning networking, keep networking. I wish I did more of that when I started. Reach out to people. I mentioned this in the chat last week. You guys would be surprised who in the league. Everyone's open to talk, meet new people, see who's out there.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. Yeah, we talked about that. Me and Yossi spoke at something last week, and yeah, it's always surprised. Like same thing. Before I got into the league, I talked to general managers, vice presidents, scouts, like just by cold contacting. And there's a lot, and not everyone's not going to respond, but some people will, and people generally want to help you because someone helped them. So, all right, Yossi, good to see you, brother. We'll catch you later.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
All right. Next we got live from the San Antonio Spurs game. Kendra was working out there. We're excited. So as well for this trade course, we're excited to have Kendra with us. Like I said, she's a NBA trainer, medical professional, and she'll dive into a little bit of the trade process. Same thing. Raise your hands anytime. But what typically goes on is like learning a player's medical history, their prognosis, how that plays into trades, and you can ask questions and red flags, yellow flags, green flags. And so for you all, as you're making trades, like we want you to utilize Kendra, and for all of us to learn. I learn more from Kendra each time she comes to share than anyone else. But we have our medical in the Slack, and so when you have a player that has an injury history or you're curious, drop it in there. She's going to kind of let everyone know. what that looks like, what a prognosis would be, and et cetera. But me and Kendra work together with the Portland Trailblazers as well. She's currently doing some stuff with the Spurs and the NBA officials. And so, Kendra, awesome to have you. Tell us a little bit about, your journey in basketball.
Sure. You want to go all the way back to like fourth grade when I no. So basketball's always been my sport. That's my original relationship with it, but I was never gonna play in college. Let's be real, you guys. So I joined the military right out of high school, did medic there as a corpsman, and then decided to go to Oregon State, where I majored in athletic training. And then after nobody would accept me to a regular athletic training job, I got a very lucky network that I had made through Oregon State, who recommended me to Jeff Clark, who was at the time the head athletic trainer for the Trailblazers. So I got an internship there that turned into a total of 3 years with them. Turned into like an actual full-time job. And then I decided that it wasn't enough and I wanted to become a doctor. So now I am working part-time as an athletic trainer. I don't have any affiliation with the Spurs, unfortunately. I really wish I did because I am a Texas girl, so I grew up being a Spurs fan. But I work specifically with the NBA referees because they run up and down the court too. So a few years ago back, the refs union hired Select Medical to cover their pregame. So we go in like 2 hours before the game and then give them training services as needed. And then, yeah, so I'm just anxiously awaiting med school right now. So I'm here for all the medical questions. I am extremely green when it comes to everything that y'all were just talking about. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about the front office side, outside of just communicating back and forth about medical stuff as well. So yeah, and he slightly mentioned about the green, yellow, red. So at trades, at drafts, the medical staff is always giving somewhat of a rating on the boards for the front office to use. So if a guy's more of a high risk, meaning like he might be really, really great, but he also has a high risk of getting injured within the contract that you're signing with him, we're gonna put that at a red. And then obviously like yellow is a little bit better and green is the guy's pretty solid, like outside of a freak accident happening, he doesn't have a history that's trailing with him into the contract that you're potentially signing with that player. So that's pretty much basically what it is. John, I don't know if you want to say a little bit more before we open the floor to questions, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll take questions and we'll dive into all this. And then with that, would love for you to, hopefully the questions will come through or ask them, but of, the medical staff at a trade deadline. I mean, I'll say that the medical staff has a ton of power. Sometimes there's medical people that will have more power with an owner than a general manager. Same thing in relationships. A lot of times I'd say medical staff has been there longer than a general manager. So I've seen different dynamics where, the owner will go to the medical person and not the GM about a player and who we should acquire. And so, the medical staff has a lot of influence. And even when a player is deciding to play, it's usually the player, the head athletic trainer, the GM, the coach, and it's almost equal responsibility for all of them. And so, obviously, and then the trade deadline, it's a huge thing. So, we'll dive into it, Kendra, but like, once we can hold off, but like, I'm just like really at the trade deadline, like what's happening when a player, where are you guys getting the medical history from? And what are you conveying to a GM? What are you conveying to an ownership team and all that? But we'll go ahead and kick off questions with Noah.
Hi, Kendra. Thank you for being here. One question I would have is when it comes to maybe a trade deadline or the NBA draft, how often does injury history or just injuries in general impact a player's fate, whether being drafted, being traded for. Is that common among most players in the NBA? And how significant is that, I guess, with their decision making?
For sure. Depending on the injury, it can make or break you. And while we have a lot of pull as athletic trainers, because maybe we've worked one-on-one with these players before, or like seen them in the draft prior to eventually wanting to trade with them, like you'll have a bunch of people come through on the draft. So maybe I've worked with this guy before, but he wasn't on our team or whatever the thing is. Our doctors are also playing a really significant role. So my role at the Trailblazers, unfortunately, I was never in the bunker of the decisions being made. But I was collecting all of the data so that we could provide everybody with all of the stuff. So our head athletic trainer who had been there, I mean, I was there in 2016 to 19, and he had been there since like 97, I think. So, he's got a lot of history in the league and just a lot of knowledge in general. So you take his knowledge and then you combine it with a medical professional like our DO that was a family practice physician who's our team physician, and you combine those two things together to give the GM like a rating with that. So it can make or break you, meaning like if I can only find like one ankle sprain from your high school and college career, you're probably going to be a green. Like there's no medical risk that you're taking there. Sorry, you guys keep like moving around. I'm like trying to follow. No. um, and so, but if you had like an ACL tear in high school, I want to see how long it took you to come back, how many games you've missed since then. Have you had any other time, like big sections where you weren't playing, or has it caused potentially other injuries that you've had that seem minor when you look at them by themselves, but when you compile it with an ACL injury, you're like, oh, this is probably because this thing is not great. So there's compensation happening. And we might not always, with the trade, what happens is that team is supposed to give you that medical information that they have, because other than that, we're not privy to each team's medical history, like their current medical history. And so we'll get that and we have to comb through all of that and read through everything. Sometimes we don't get to see them in person and do our own imaging. So we have to take that. That's where the trade deadline is a little bit different than other areas where we have time to bring that guy in and like do our own workup and have our doctors see them. So a lot of it is just relying on the research. But like I said, if you have something major that happened, or if you have something that's just always happening every season that's taking you out for a certain amount of time, like they're, unless you're just like the risk reward makes sense, they're not going to want to take that risk on that contract to put their money down, basically, because they want the reward to outweigh the risk for sure.
Of course, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, great answer. Cyril.
Quick question. You kind of talked about it right there with the risk and reward, but to go on to that a bit more, if maybe the team yourself like finds out one of your player maybe has a congenital issue that maybe flares up a risk that like they're bow-legged or something like that, how do you, in that terms, I guess, evaluate your own players if that like you think, oh, this guy's not going to have a long career? Is that something you even think about if you maybe happen to discover something while the player's on your roster?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I know this was made public, so I could say it, and it's years ago, but like, oh my gosh, and now I'm forgetting his name. Who is a player that went with, he was there with Dame and then he went to the Spurs.
LaMarcus Aldridge?
Yes, LaMarcus Aldridge. Oh my gosh. I could like see his jersey, but I couldn't say the name. So when LA was with the Blazers, he found out that he had like one of those congenital heart situations, which can end your career basically. So what ends up happening is that we hold on to that player and we do everything we can in that moment to maintain him and make sure that he's good to go. But you also, let's say that some other team wanted him, like we have to disclose that information. You can't hide that. You can't be like, oh yeah, let's drop LA because he's probably got like maybe a year left, if even. You can't do that. So like when you're trading those, I mean, you're not supposed to do that. Like especially with something that big. I'm sure that there are teams in the past that have like not documented everything that they were supposed to. Like, let's just be real. Sometimes that happens on accident. Sometimes it's intentional. I don't know, but you have to give that information. So you can also have players while they're with you, have something that's more like of a metabolic thing, like different stuff that we just come up with that oh, I didn't see that. What did you say? Blazers accused. Oh, fun.
The Gary Payton deal.
Gary Payton second.
Oh,
Yeah.
no way, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I went to college with that kid. Um uh so yeah, you're just getting stuff as it comes. And the only difference between that and an acute injury is that, like, people might not know about that. You might not be sitting out games for something that's metabolic. Like, let's say you have something like a type 2 diabetes diagnosis, or like something along the lines of like a hormone imbalance or something that doesn't show up until you're in your 20s, because a lot of those congenital diseases that are metabolic don't show up until you're in your 20s. So you were like fine your whole life, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, like I feel weird, I feel off, what's going on? So you just have to manage them the best you can, and luckily they have all the resources at their fingertips. So, but in a trade situation, you have to give all that information to somebody, because it's cheating. Basically, you're lying. You're like, we're going to trade you somebody and they're actually broken. Like, yeah.
No, thank you for that. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's the injury stuff is interesting because teams do get sneaky with it.
You
And
can, because you
yeah,
can.
yeah, you try to withhold things, but if you get found out, I don't know. When I was with the Blazers, there's multiple lawsuits. I don't know if it happens with every team, but different things were happening. And so whether we were guilty or another team, and usually things end up getting settled. But and then the draft was really interesting. I mean, not at the draft, of course, but the thing that was really interesting to me there was, a lot of players would or wouldn't work out for teams, and some wouldn't send their medical records in. I guess, for example, Harry Giles. I don't know if you guys remember Harry. He was like the #1 player in high school for years. I mean, he was a stud in high school. He was going to be the #1 pick and everything, and just kept having the knee issues. I think the ACLs, but multiple times. And teams didn't really know what's this prognosis going to be. And our GM had a relationship with his agent, and we were able to get his medical records. And I remember other teams were not able to get his medical records and just had to shoot from the hip whether they wanted him or not. What's funny is I think we actually drafted him and
We
traded him.
did. We
Um,
did.
we didn't draft him to keep him, but we put him in a deal.
Is
And
that
so,
the Zach Collins?
yeah, it was Zach Collins deal when the rest of our staff wanted Donovan Mitchell, but
I mean,
yeah, we all wanted Donovan, but we'll save that for another time.
yeah.
But yeah, no, so that was a really interesting thing where, we were able to get medical records, and it kind of got to see the relationships of GMs and agents and how much that plays into everything. And so same thing, at a trade deadline, obviously agents are highly involved, and your GM having good relationships with the agents can provide a lot of the missing pieces that you need to make a decision on your end. But in the most recent CBA, they updated it to where every team gets pre-draft medical records across the board, so that stuff can't happen anymore. So, all right, Austin, what do you got?
Hey Kendra, so my question for you is, as you're sorting all these players based on the different categories, like you've got the red, the yellow, and the green, is there one category that like most players tend to fall into?
Mm, I mean, it depends on a lot of factors, like how long they've been in the league, like, because just being in the league for 5+ years, you're probably gonna have something. Like, there's probably not a single player that's never set out a game for something or anything. But um, I mean, off the top of my head, for trade stuff, I feel like they probably lean a little bit more towards the yellow, because if these guys are getting traded, they've probably been traded before and before and before. Like, there's a group of people in the NBA that kind of just continually get their whole career is just getting traded back and forth. And I would say those guys sit in that yellow because maybe they're second or third string and they have an injury. So the front office might be a yellow and we might be a yellow. You might be able to speak a little bit more to the front office side of that category of player. That's just been my experience with that trade deadline. They probably all kind of sit in that yellow. Unless they're young, of course, and just haven't been around as much, but
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
Tyrus.
Yes. Hey, Kendra. So, how do teams monitor player fatigue and workload to prevent injuries during the 82 game season?
Yeah, there's a ton of ways and every team is different. There's no like standard on there's very few things that are standard across the entire NBA medical side where they require you to do certain things. You would think that there would just be kind of like a structure, but it's all part of that competitive edge. It's like, oh, we're gonna get the best, newest thing, and we're gonna be doing that. There is a lot of info that we get from the cameras that they have at the game. I don't know if y'all are aware of those. You can look them up, but they'll show you like how many miles the guy ran, how many times he jumped, how many times he, like there's all these stats on based on movement. Like I've mentioned this multiple times, but I just think it's a cool fact. Like CJ McCollum, the way that our plays were going, he would run like 6 miles in a game, um, which is nuts. He had the most mileage of anybody, like out of the whole NBA, he was like the top because you can look at like game by game or you can look at the entire season. And that was just wild to me. I was like, we got to switch up some plays so he's not running in circles everywhere. But really, you're just collecting data on them and different metrics that you're using to monitor that stuff. You can go anywhere from HRV, which is heart rate variability, that we took on the players for some time, but now a lot of players have like the beds that tell you how they slept and kind of give you the score when you wake up. There's a lot more wearables now than there used to be, that are less inconvenient for the players. Because I think you have to have their buy-in on like, oh, I need you to wear this thing or I need you to do this. Like you're just adding extra steps to their practice routine. And a lot of it is just priests like hoping that they do everything they're supposed to do during that off season, because you
Yeah.
can't really do a ton during the season. They're playing 82 games. So all you can do like preseason and then once they start playing games, you're just maintaining. Like you and the strength coaches are just trying to maintain whatever they have and maybe improve like little tweaks, but you're not going to make like big gains during a season. So
Right.
um really just taking measurements throughout the seasons and making sure people are not getting into an area where we're worried about that like neuromuscular fatigue situation on the court, um, which is just a big factor. Like if you're not in shape and you go play these games, at some point you're fatigued, like you're mentally, physically tired, but what you don't understand is so is your neuromuscular system. So when you go to like make that cut or like you come down from a jump and your body is like neuromuscularly tired, then your body is not responding fast enough for your muscles to contract. So that's when you get injuries because then the next line of defense is the tendon or the ligament to like make sure that your body does what it's supposed to do. And sometimes it can't handle that. So
Gotcha.
a lot of different factors
Appreciate that.
that could go on for, yeah, depending on whoever you talk to in different teams.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest changes I saw in my time was in the medical area, but I feel like players in like this is just, 15 years ago or whatever, but players would just show up for training camp and whether they were in shape or not was determined by, a sprinting test. They would just sprint. And, you know, there's been a lot of changes since then, but now when a player shows up at camp, well, one, they show up like a month early usually, and they slowly get into conditioning shape. But they run so many like baseline tests And kind of some of the things those Kendra's talking about, like they want to know, I don't know, Kendra, you could say, but there's like all these baseline tests. So then anytime a player gets injured, turns an ankle, busts a knee, a hip, whatever, then they have a baseline where, okay, before this player is able to get back on the court, we got to get them back to their baseline, as opposed to like, oh, is the player in shape? Can they run up and down the court? Can they ride a bike? Cool, put them back on the court. So now there's so many. What would some of those baseline tests that you start the season out with, Kendra?
Um, we would do like so we had these plates that you can stand on and do different styles of jumps off of. So it tells you like how much you're favoring one leg versus another. Like even though it's a double foot jump, you might be like 90% intent, like have a little bit more on one. So like, 60-40 or something like that. And we can start with that knowledge. We do like single leg stuff. There was also some, and I never remember what this machine is called. I always have to ask Ryan. Uh, but basically, like, think of a normal cable machine, but instead of just being able to move weight, it resists you to whatever force you're pushing. So it will get max force from you. So like you're just like giving everything you got, and you might be going this slow, but it's measuring the newtons or whatever that they're measuring it in, whatever metric you have it in, to match it. So if somebody will take them maybe like in midway through season or something like that and be like, dang, here's their new baseline, or maybe we need to reevaluate because it's significantly lower than their baseline was. And players that have injuries, we use all of those, like you said, and maybe you're not at 100% where you were before, and that's when you see players doing like, okay, well, we're capping you at 10 minutes tonight. You can play 10 minutes. Like you'll have part of the minutes, but they're only 10. You're not just like full 100% back on the court, because we calculate for that fatigue.
Yeah, no, good stuff. I remember we had some baseball trainers who would kind of come join our staff for the summer, and that's once we started making these changes. They were talking to us about how like they're like, you guys were just very reactive with injuries. Like you weren't proactive towards preventing injuries. You were reactive towards healing people after injuries. And just I feel like that's kind of been a change, across the board in sports. There's so much more technology, but it used to just be very reactive. A guy gets hurt and go to rehab, and now it's like, how can we prevent injuries? And I think we don't need to get into players sitting out games and stuff, but that's where like there's probably been an overcorrection where it's like now you have so much information that's like, okay, if a guy has a 4% chance of getting injured, do you play him? What if it's 6%? What if it's 8%? What if it's 10%? So there's just so much information now, where used to you just kind of pushed them on the court and you played. But now there's just so many people and opinions and information to go through. Mike EV, what do you got?
Hi, Kendra. So there haven't been very many trades I remember where it gets kind of revoked or rescinded because of an injury. But one I do remember like really well, just because it could have had like major ramifications, was Tyson Chandler back in 2009 was traded from the Hornets to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and it got revoked because they thought there was too much of a chance of him re-injuring his big toe. I guess his left big toe. Um, just was wondering, like, is that just kind of like the doctor's discretion, or did you guys just, because most trades go through, I'm guessing they do their research and everything there. Like, did you guys just go through all of that before, where like none of that happened with the Blazers in terms of trades being revoked?
I I have like some kind of a memory of like there was somebody that we wanted, and I'm confusing maybe if it was draft and or a trade deadline, but I mean, the front office is going to have the names that they want regardless of medical at first. Like they're like, this is the stuff that's going to work, and they're going to narrow their list down before they come to us. most likely, just because unless there's just something like glaring, this guy set out for a year before the trade and they want our opinion first. But I feel like, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they do all that math and all of the risk reward assessment. And then they're like, okay, now we have like these are the top people we're interested in. And that's when it kind of comes down to a little bit of a medical, because they've already checked every other box off. Like, this works for the salary, this works for, the players, this works for how the team and like the person we actually need. And then you can kind of take into account and use us as a process of elimination, maybe a little bit. I mean, and this is all happening simultaneously, like they're in contact with other teams and they're on the phone while they're walking on a treadmill for an hour, like talking about what they're going to do. So I feel like I can't, John, do you remember anybody that was like that? Or am I just
Chandler
like,
Parsons.
say that again?
Chandler Parsons.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know how it gets that far and then you're like, heck no. I don't know what it would take to recall for a medical reason, or if that's just the excuse they used because you can use that. Do you know what I mean?
John, do you remember this where we were like, it was us or Memphis that were looking into signing Chandler Parsons, and then I think we got the medical back or something, and it was just kind of like, don't really want to
No,
touch him.
same thing. I mean, it went back to an agent relationship. We got the medicals and Memphis didn't.
Mhm.
And so we got the and I think this is a public story now because I heard Chandler Parsons talking about it. But yeah, so basically we were the front runners to land Chandler Parsons, and it was the day of, the signing was going to happen, and us in Memphis were both, trying to get him. He was in Memphis at the time, and we were able to get the medical records, and it was just like red flag, red flag, red flag. Like, we're out of so we get out of the business. But before that, obviously you guys know with woes and shams, that stuff gets out quick. So Chandler Parsons' agent knew that we knew that he couldn't play anymore. And so they were in their meeting with Memphis, and he goes, "We're signing now. Chandler, sign." And so that's why Memphis got stuck with the deal, is once they realized we were out, his agent was like, do the Memphis deal immediately before Memphis finds out the medicals. Because once even if Memphis knew that we had pulled out, they would have pulled out just to be like, what's going on? So he got the deal with Memphis. So
That's crazy.
yeah.
But yeah,
it was-
is it like the doctor's discretion too? Like, will different team doctors have different things they're looking at?
I mean, I'm sure. I mean, like I said, that they're talking this through. Like, the doctors are. I'm pretty sure that our team doc was in the meetings, like the final ones where they're like, getting it down to the bottom, um, or they had already put what they needed to say. They're definitely there for draft. I don't know if they're always there for the trades, but um, they they're just weighing their own medical opinion, and all they're doing is saying, this is my opinion. You guys can do whatever you want with that information. Like, here is what I am saying, and now add that information to the rest of all the information that you got to make in this trade and do with that what you will. Like, so while we have a lot of pull, because it might be like, okay, well, the GM's like, nope, I'm not taking the risk because of this. It's still just a cog in all of the stuff. So an important one, because it's risk reward, a longevity. But if you have a long-term plan that might be like, well, we just need this guy for a year and then we can do this thing, you don't need him for 5 years. So do you think he's going to be good to play just for a year if this is our plan? And the doc will be like, I mean, here's that risk reward situation. So it changes based on the longevity and all that other stuff that the plan that the GM has for the team as a whole.
yeah. I mean,
The
just to
easiest
piggyback.
question. Oh, sorry, Johnny.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like in the risk reward thing, like, yeah, that's what teams do with everything. So like the Trailblazers back in the day, they were in the Jailblazers era, and so because all they cared about was talent, that was it. Like the franchise was like, get as much talent as we can get, and that's how we're rolling. but obviously there was a lot of issues in the community, and the community started turning against the team, and so they had to change things. So what did they move the risk to? They moved it to injuries. And so who did they draft? Brandon Roy, Greg Oden, LaMarcus Aldridge, all guys with serious health issues, but very talented. And so it's like at every time you're deciding, are we going to risk character? Are we going to risk talent? Are we going to risk injury history? And so the LeBron James is, who just checks all the boxes are awfully rare. You're usually giving up something. Are you giving up talent? Are you giving up injury? Are you giving up character? And I think Brandon Roy's a great example of the Blazers knew that was a year before I got there, but they knew he wasn't going to have a long career when they drafted him, and they took him 6th. They traded up to get him, and it was the right move. Brandon was awesome for 5 years and took the Blazers from the Jailblazer era back into the playoffs. Where they made a mistake was then they signed him to a max extension, and his knees were done before that extension kicked in. And so, same thing, risk reward. They wanted to, honor, respect him for getting us to the playoffs, when in reality, they should have been like, hey, we got our 5 years out of him. Like, we're going to move on. And so, yeah, those things are always interesting. Mikey V, were you going to jump in on that?
Yeah. I think the easiest question I could have asked about that whole thing is, it seems like I would say like 99% of the time, everybody goes through medicals and it's all good. What does going through medicals after a trade look like for you guys?
Well, when we get that information from the other team, we're combing all that stuff. And now it's like on the computer, you're not like actually combing through physical records. But and once they're in the NBA, it's unless it was on the TV or recorded in a medical record, like if it was during practice and they didn't document it, I don't know. Like there's no way to know that. So documentation is key to that. But then after that, like once they come to you, we're immediately taking you to our doctor's office, or they're coming to us to like go over everything. So we have a family practice physician. We run like regular lab tests. We have an orthopedic surgeon, like doctor, come and do all his ortho tests. We also do like x-ray and MRI. So we're going through the whole thing like we would a draft, and then saying like, okay, we believe that all the stuff you gave us was what we found, and now this is a complete trade.
Awesome. Thank you, Kendra.
Mm-hmm.
Last question, Ciro.
Hey, Kendra, I know you touched on it throughout, but with big men being the most common or finicky guys in terms of injury, with their lower bodies being more, I guess, susceptible to them, how do you, I guess, you guys as trainers and just the training staff evaluate which, I guess, what players, if you're going to bring somebody in, is who has an injury history or maybe has a tendency not to play a full season, is going to be reliable? Like, for example, Hassan Whiteside or Enes Kanter, where they actually played the most minutes with the Portland Trailblazers in comparison to the teams they had before or after.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's so subjective. Like there's really no way to know outside of just like looking at them as they present and looking at their injury history. I mean, we could watch film and like see how they move on the court and be like, I don't know, like not a fan of this, but like some people just move differently, and if you change it, then they get an injury. So it's a kind of a catch-22 where you don't want to like come in and like, oh, well, we're going to change how you run because then everything else follows that, or whatever the thing is. I think I mean, for us, I think we needed them at that time on our bench. Like we needed that rotation. We relied on them. I think that, I mean, when I was there, I was always like, I feel like we take guys that were like second string and make them first strings, and then they prove that they should have been first string. Like, like that's how I felt about like Hassan Whiteside, and Enes Kanter had a great run for a little bit while he was with us. But that's a tough question to. You just don't really know. Like, you're just making assumptions. With everybody, but I mean, big men for sure. They're definitely just a little bit. I mean, they're higher off the ground. They got more weight that they're moving around. They really have to like their whole life. They have to live a little bit differently. So, yeah, you just try to make sure that they're in the best shape possible, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, good stuff, Kendra. Well, we are excited to have Kendra not just this week, but next week as well. And obviously she'll be on the Slack, answer medical. So like if you guys, same thing, like specific medical questions around specific players. That's where like as a trade exercise, we want this just as immersive as possible. And so, when you're trying to figure out players, I feel like, again, I learned a ton. I'm sure you guys all learned a ton about how this process goes and operates. And so yeah, we're excited to utilize Kendra for that. And Noah, actually, Noah, you had a couple questions in the chat. Go ahead and shoot those out here as well.
Okay. Is there a rule, an official NBA rule regarding disclosing medical records during trades?
I'm gonna say yes. I haven't like read the rule, but that's the rule, I guess.
Okay.
I think that there's a time limit. Like, you don't have to like, I request it, you send it to me, but there is like a once things get to this level, then now you are required to send them that stuff. And even on guys that we're trading, like, we're scrubbing that record and making sure that it's presentable and things are documented appropriately. And so that when we give that to another team, they'll want to give us the same thing, like it was definitely like, let's make sure that we actually documented all the stuff that happened this season. Like, if we missed something, we need to go back and like make sure that everything is buttoned up when we hand over medicals. So I will look that up and I will get back to you.
I'm sure if there is a rule, there's also penalties as well if you don't send them over. I'd
I
imagine.
would assume, but I haven't encountered anybody that wasn't. I know that there's been some stuff where it's like, all right, like, we need these now or like yesterday. But I don't think, personally, I didn't have any that like weren't cooperative with it. They might have been messy records. Like, I remember that being like, this is a hot mess. Like, it's all over the place. But no like actual denying of.
Gotcha. Thank
I'm
you.
sure it happens, but
No,
not
it's okay.
I didn't see it.
And then the second one would be, might have been regarding Tyson Chandler or Chandler Parsons. I'm not sure, but from one of the topics earlier, can a toe injury really cause a trade reversal or denial, I guess? Or
I mean,
wouldn't that just heal? Isn't it just, it's not like an organ?
It's bone.
Fair. Okay.
So, not necessarily. It depends on what it is. Think about, I don't know if you've ever had a toe injury, but it's pretty debilitating. Like, you rely on, it's something that you don't think about from a day-to-day basis, but like, if you have a toe injury, the whole chain all the way up is going to be affected. And so it's, maybe you can like run on it and you can get by, but it's going to set you up to be off
That makes
enough
sense.
that over time and over mileage, which you're doing a lot of in practice and games, it can add up, especially if you had other things already happening up the chain. And then you had a toe injury that the bone's not healing. We put a pin and then that pin failed. So now we got to go back in and do another surgery. So now you're like 6 weeks out and the guy hasn't played because the original pin failed. And now like, it's more of the like overtime maintenance and making sure that something could be totally fine and it would heal. But if you got a guy where like you did this thing over and over again and it's not working, that's going to be a problem that will potentially have him on your bench more than on the court.
That makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
Thanks. It sounds silly. It sounds really silly. It's like, hangnail, really? But
it
like,
shouldn't have sounded silly, though. It did at first, but
it does.
It's an injury at the end of the day.
Yeah. Especially if it's your big toe. I mean,
yeah,
like,
if it was the little toe, would that be a deal breaker?
your balance is off, but like you can handle that. Big toe, every single time you run, you're pushing off on that thing.
Fair. Okay. Yeah, I would have never really thought about the differences between whether the toe is big or small and how that could affect, I guess, how
Well,
you.
like I mean, like your actual big toe, you rely on that for movement all day. So let's say like maybe tomorrow, just like put a band-aid around your big toe
Okay.
and walk around and just see how it like changes how your feel your toe is. Like maybe put like 2 or 3 band-aids to just give you some like sensation of like something's off
Oh my
and
gosh.
how annoying it is.
I can already imagine
Yeah.
it.
And so then like you think about pushing through, and obviously your thumb is your big toe, but I'm using my pointer finger. So when you're pushing through, if you have an injury here, now you want to avoid that. So now you're like coming over here and pushing off. So now you have like an ankle thing happening and your foot's
Right.
all weird, or you're always trying to avoid the pain or the restriction that you have there. Maybe you can't flex it all the way back like you're supposed to, and now you're making up for that flexion somewhere to get the movement that you want somewhere up the chain. So
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Kendra could explain it a lot better than me, but what she just said is a fascinating thing to me. Like, when a guy, I mean, we're speaking about toe, but then you overcompensate, and it's like, when a guy ankle injuries are very common, but it's like if you start like, overcompensating, now you're gonna bust up a knee, and you'll see guys with hip issues, and like she said, up the chain. So that's where each somewhat minor injury just has such a ripple effect through the body, where all those things just become so important of taking care of the whole structure. Kendra, you're welcome to stay for the Cerebro training if you'd like, but awesome to have you here. And like I said, she'll be with us on the Slack channel and everything. But Kendra, do you have any words you want to share with the class before we wrap up your session?
No, I'm excited to be a part of it. I don't want you to abuse the Slack channel, but I also want you to like envision that you're actually working somewhere. And if in an instant when you were there, you would go walk to medical and ask them a question, that's when you reach out and ask me a question. So not every 2 seconds, but it's like, okay, I've gotten to this point and now I need this. I'm gonna walk over to medical. That's when you get on Slack and ask me stuff. So, and I will try my best to answer within a 24-hour period and then closer when it gets, when we get further along in the course. So
Awesome. Thanks, Kendra. Um, all right. Well, Bjorn, before we do Cerebrum, I'm going to ask you one other question from that Brett sent in. That's a great question for you. But Brett said, how do you start to look for good individual defenders on other teams or draft prospects? How do you separate team defense and what stats show that best in your opinion?
Thought you're gonna. I've been dealing with a toe injury for about the past like 5 weeks. Oddly enough, like I played pickleball after not playing in years, and then all of a sudden it was like my right big toe just will get like dislocated, like or pop out of place, and I'll feel pain. I'm like, I've never dealt with this before, and like all the times, so it's just a really strange phenomenon. But I can attest, like it definitely changes like how you walk and consciously like every step you're taking, like okay, I don't want it to pop out, like I don't want to deal with like the nerve pain and all that stuff. So I can attest to that. So back to the topic at hand. Individual defense, a lot of that, like defense is really, really tough to measure. Every team kind of has their own like formulas or things that they value specifically from it. Statistically, it's a little bit tougher. I'll show you one of the metrics we have in Cerebro that's based purely off of like things like, steals, blocks, foul rate. But I mean, there's so few things that are publicly available. Like you just kind of learn to value things over the others or things that have more of a correlation with NBA sticking success more so than others. Like to me, like steal percentage, almost regardless of position, like it's more bearing of success than like even block rate. I think block rate is important, but typically steal percentage and whether you can read a certain threshold or not tends to be like one of the things I find disqualifying. Or not. But a lot of the times, like if you're looking at like individual defense, you're watching a guy on film. Like, does he rotate? Does he hit his marks? Like, how like is he? Have his hands up? Like, is he actually like engaged like with the team scheme? Does he know where he's supposed to be? Is he like helping? Like, is he on time? Like, there's just so many things you kind of get a feel for. Like, how well does he contest shots? Is he in position to contest shots? Well, so there's just so many like difference in, like a lot of the times like when you're watching film and you're relying on analytics, it's like okay, like I'm looking to confirm like what I'm seeing, but again, it's like what do you value relative to those things? So it's you ask 30 teams, you're probably going to get like 30 answers just based on their setups, especially now with like Second Spectrum and Hawkeye, and now the Hawkeye cameras have hand coordinates and can account for body position for players relative to each other and all these joints. I'm sure there's things that they're measuring and putting into place and kind of learning on the fly since it's a relatively uh, young process. But yeah, it's a very fluid thing that's ever developing for sure. Did I get all the
Yeah.
dimensions of that?
No, that was great. All right, yeah, let's dive into Cerebro. And as Bjorn talks about Cerebro, the one thing I say with Bjorn, thank you to you and Ryan and Cerebro. We love you guys. But with these tools that you have access to, like make the most of them. Like I always say, especially if you enjoy that thing, become the expert in them because teams will look to hire people who know these things. When I first got hired, Synergy was newer and I knew how to use Synergy, and that got my resume looked at and helped me get that's one of the reasons the Trailblazers hired me. And so when there's these tools that you have access to, like take advantage of them, especially with Bjorn as a resource here to help us. It's awesome. So Bjorn, take it away, brother.
Give me just a second here. I'm running into some permissions stuff with my screen share. I'm set up for like Google Meet. I'm not set up for Zoom, but yeah, give me just a minute if you want to talk about something real quick.
Yeah, no, all good. Yeah, no, I'll just talk more about that, but with Cerebro. But yeah, like I said, as things come up, we've talked about over and over, what you're passionate about, what your journey is. But Cerebro is a tool. Mark Cuban is an investor in it. And a lot of NBA teams starting to use it, college teams. And so take advantage of, learning how to utilize it. And then, obviously we have someone with Bjorn. You guys have specific questions. He's a resource for all of us to use. Just you're welcome to, have you guys used Cerebro before or familiar with it at all? I know some of you who've been in classes previously, but
I've used it through knowing Bjorn, and like I've been using
oh,
it
okay.
just because I got put on. I really like the CRAM and
Yeah.
just kind of the way it accounts for stats a bit differently than like what your the traditional metrics give you that like are widely available.
Mm-hmm.
All right, can you guys see my screen? Is it showing the Cerebro main page? Okay, cool. Before I get into it, I wanted to note that we've got a system update going through and at the end of the month here in the next few days where things are going to look a little bit different with kind of like a fresh coat of paint on it. It's going to be mostly the same, but things are just going to look slightly different. We do have a Cerebro AI setup that's going to be more incorporated in it as well. I'll probably wait and see like what is incorporated on that before I get together like a demo or send over a video for those of you that are interested. But we're gonna have more like graphing comparison functionality. We're gonna have a 5ms like spider charts, which again I'll get into and I'll explain in kind of a 2.0 that launches here in the next couple of days, and then we've got even a 2.1 that's going to be launching here with even more features at the end of February or early March, which has got some really cool stuff coming through. But everyone on this call should be set up with a Cerebro account. If you haven't received an email, hopefully like check through. If not, just let me know. I'll make sure that you get set up, or if you need a password reset or anything else. But you guys will all have a gold setup, so you'll have access to all the data, features, and functionality within the setup of Cerebro to just play around and have fun and use it how you see fit. Um, so here on the starting page, now that you guys can see my screen, we've got a player search function where I can go in, search just about anyone. Like if they've played basketball and there's a box score that's available, there's a really good chance that we have it. We're the world's largest aggregator of basketball box scores in the world, and that's at all levels: NBA, WNBA, overseas, like really like just about every overseas league. If they put out a box score, we've got it. NCAA D1, D2, D3, JUCO, NAIA, men's and women's. And then the main differentiator for me, relative to everyone else, is the high school data. Having high school playoffs from each state, having high school like tournaments that like are on YouTube but are unstatted, and we'll go through, and we've got a stats by video crew that will go through and put all this stuff into box scores, and not to mention all the shoe circuit stuff, with Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour, and we have got processes in place to go through, verify, make sure it checks out, like that there's no monkeying of the box scores or any fixing, which oddly I didn't realize was a thing before a couple years ago. But we go through and we go make sure that all this stuff checks out before we push it onto the platform. So Dallas-based company, I'll use Luka Doncic as kind of the opening example of a player search. So you'll go in, it'll give you the, basics of Luca in here. So you'll have like his most recent event. You'll have his RAM score, which is kind of like how the sausage is made, an aggregate of all of these box score data features that tell you how he did in a given event. And then Ciro alluded to it, but CRAM, which is contextual RAM, which is how does a player do relative to an average player in a given event. So 0 to 10 soft scale, 5 being an average player. If you were 7 or above, it's a bronze. If it was 8.5 to 9.9, it's a silver. You were really good in it. Bronze, again, you were a really good performer. If it was 10 or above, you broke the scale. Like you were elite. You were like one of the top performers in a given event, like the 1 or 2% best performers. So as you can see, Luca has been among the elite in the NBA when it comes to box score performance. So we'll have all the events as kind of like a career resume of a player in this case. Like we'll have all Real Madrid stuff for Luca. We'll have some of the Slovenia stuff, all his Mavericks seasons. We'll have the game counts on the side, and then we'll have a breakdown again with the RAM and CRAM. And what I really like, I'm not a big one number metric kind of guy, but CRAM to me is one of those things where it's really cool to see how many like standard deviations better than the average player like was this guy. And that's where I can really quickly go in. I just see the visual cues of all this gold, and I'm like, okay, he's really, really good. Like this is what a top five like player in the NBA like looks like. Not to mention like he did it well before he entered the NBA, and he's doing it at the NBA level. So really quickly, like if I've never seen a guy, I can go in, I can check it out, and it's really cool. It's like me and Mikey V were at the Les Schwab Invitational, a big basketball tournament in Portland where we had like La Lumiere and Gonzaga, and it's like I'd never seen any of these guys, and just looking them up on Cerebro, where we've got game counts of like a few dozen games on all these guys in high school, it was almost like a cheat code. It's like, okay, I really quickly know what this guy shoots from three. I know what his career track record is, and I know like if he's really any good or not, or like did he peak early? Like, is he a late bloomer? Has he always been dominant? So that stuff's been really cool to me. So then we'll have the 5MS, 5 metric suite, and all the categories that are associated with it. So we've got a pure scoring prowess. These are the categories like field goal percentage and points factor into that. Each of the 5MSs are again 0 to 100 soft scale, and it will get in kind of the archetype structure, which I'll get into in a bit. But so we have pure scoring prowess, 3-point efficiency, floor general skills, around the rim finishing, and defensive statistical impact, again, which is just based off of like steals, blocks, and foul rate. So really cool to be able to go in, check out a complete resume of a player from high school, AAU, college, international, pro, and see how they develop as it goes on. And we'll have different ways you can look at it too. So you can look at per game averages, you can look at per 40s, you can look at their bio data to see how they've changed over time, their height and weight, position, anything. And then we've got, some graph functionality as well, where you can parse it by, the 5MS, different things. And so that's one way you can go through and look at a player. You can click into all the events here. You can also go over to the data sets feature on the side to look for events at different levels. So you could go through and look up high school stuff, and you can look up like, I want to see like all the 2024, 25 stuff from, the high school level, or, really internationally. Like if you were curious to look up a guy from a certain threshold, like really cool to be able to do that. But for our purposes, I'll go in, And again, college basketball's on here as well. We've got a transfer portal, so really cool tool to be able to use if you're interested in college basketball. You can see who the top guys are as they stack up into each other. But for all purposes, we'll use the NBA regular season. I'll click in there. If you click on the title of the event, it will tell you how many like teams, players, number of games, all the links out to the like the video and the data sourcing, some just basics of the actual event itself. And then if you go through, you can see the stack up of how everyone compares relative to each other. So based on CRM alone, like Nikola Jokic, 0 to 10 soft scale, he's at a 15, and the next highest is 12. Like that's insanely productive for one player this season. But you'll see it will go, from the gold to the silver to the bronze, and we've got 537 players, so you can click through, go see each of them individually. If I wanted to compare like the Celtics to the Cavs players roster, like I can go through, I can do that. If I wanted to look at individual players, like I can literally just search up any of them and see how they compare relative to each other. I can sort all of this by CRAM. If you want to see who the best guys are who are outside, that metal finisher, you can do that as well. You can sort it. We don't, unfortunately, you can't click in and sort the columns, but you can go through and you can check out, like, I want to look at it by around the rim, or I want to look up by 3-point percentage, or, all these different facets as well. You can go through historically by seasons. We've got all the NBA data dating back to 1979 as well. In terms of further filters, we can go through, we can look at guys just by like position. So you can look at them by class as well when they entered the NBA. So let's say like I want to see all the best like 6'5", 3-and-D guys, and based on the box score 5MS, we've got like composites for like how a guy would rank out and be able to like, qualify for something like that. If you wanted to like say I want them to at least played like six games, or I want them to shoot at least like 33% from three, like show me all those guys. Like it's Evan Mobley, Santi Aldama, and Brooke Lopez and Khalil Ware. Like so you can literally go through, and you want to get a little bit more like fine-tuned on the data, you can do that as well. Really easy to just reset it. But there's so many different ways you can look at the data sets. And so when you're looking at guys that you want to trade for, going through like doing a trade deadline exercise, or you're looking at like guys that have maybe similar salaries, or show me someone that, would qualify or meet these conditions, really useful tool to be able to go through and just parse the data on what's there. So two ways of looking at our system, like a guy, you want to find more, or you're looking for a guy too. And that's again where you can go in, like again, show me pro. Where I think this is really handy though is like high school basketball, especially like recruiting. But hey, show me all the guys from 2024 to 25. Again, that is at least like 6'4". Show me the guy that's like, the best, like, I don't know, rim running bigs that meet like all our thresholds that have played at least 5 games, and I can just plug it in and instantly get a list of all those guys that would qualify meeting those particular set of conditions. And again, can sort it out by CRAM. I can sort it out by a number of factors. So you're looking for a player, like you can definitely find them here, and that's where you can dig in more once and I can just go in and take a look further even more. So I know I threw a lot at you guys. Do you guys have any questions for me based on what you just saw? Cool. Sounds like I nailed it then. But
Yeah, that
yeah,
was
that's
awesome, Bjorn. That was really good.
yeah, thank you. I will send over a couple of like quick tutorial videos as well that you can use as quick references. And then I might send over something on the AI too as that gets baked in. I'm not completely sure how that's gonna look yet, but really excited to show you guys. I will say it's really interesting, powerful stuff. And so we've had pretty good traction at like, the college, NBA, WNBA level with that stuff. So really excited to bring you guys these tools that are kind of emerging within the NBA landscape. And, it's kind of on the forefront of bringing data and functionality, and, the high school game more so if you want to probe back into like, okay, this was what a high school, or this is what a pro looks like at the high school level, so to speak. But definitely take advantage of this for your trade deadline purposes, and put it into practice and develop, some familiarity with the platform. And I'm here to answer any questions that you guys may have within Slack. So just feel free to DM me if you guys need anything.
Awesome. Thanks, Bjorn. That was great. And I did get a couple messages from you about the email. So Bjorn's already sent them, but I know stuff sometimes doesn't come into your regular email or anything, so you can probably just DM Bjorn on Slack and just can resend it.
Yeah, there's a chance if you got added late to the list. I sent them out yesterday, but if you were a late ad, like I'll probably have to go in and add you. But again, I'll make sure you get set up on there. If you already had an account in there, I made sure like if you were on the list that you had at least gold level access. So again, anything's off or you can't find it or you need a password reset, let me know and I'll make sure you get taken care of.
Yeah, you can just hit Bjorn up. He'll get you taken care of. Man, that was a packed couple of hours. That was awesome, guys. Great questions. I had a blast tonight. I'm thankful for all you guys to be in here. Let's go. I want to go around the room real quick. Just have you. We'll keep it quick. But just introduce yourself. Who you are, where you live at, what kind of your dream job in basketball is, and then tell us what team you are running for the deadline. So we'll start with Ciro up here.
My name's Ciro. I'm from, I guess, all over. I've lived everywhere, but now I live in Miami, Florida, and I'm running the Charlotte Hornets. And my dream job is, I guess, would be, I think, definitely something with scouting, talent evaluation. I just find the art of, specifically defensively, just evaluating talent and understanding like what players, or kind of like under strategy, like the idea of like what players would fit into what scenarios and stuff like that.
Yeah, very cool. Noah.
Hi there. My name is Noah. I'm from New Jersey. I went to school in state at Ramapo College and went to Temple for my master's degree in sport business, where I finished about a year ago. I'm hoping to get into basketball operations. With a passion for basketball, it's something that I enjoyed doing. Last summer I managed a team in TBT, and I found it fulfilling. So that was a volunteer type of role. So I'm kind of looking to kind of get my foot in the door and find something sustainable full time, in this area that I enjoy working in.
And what team do you got?
Oh, I apologize. The Utah Jazz.
Jazz, nice. Tyrus.
My name is Tyrus. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I currently live in Atlanta now as a software engineer. That's my current job. I play college basketball as well. My dream job is a job in basketball operations, and my team is the Houston Rockets.
Nice. Jacob and Joe, I'm gonna skip you guys because you already spoke, but also Jacob and Joe, they're managing a collection of teams along with Alex, who helps us out as well, to fill in the rest of the league so that you can trade with every team. So they're helping out a lot. So appreciate you, Jacob and Joe. Dave.
I'm Dave, from just outside of Boston, Mass. Dream job. Would love to lead a front office one day, and I'm managing the Portland Trailblazers.
Nice. That was a hot topic tonight. A lot of Trailblazer coverage, per usual. Austin.
Hey, I'm Austin. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the team I'm managing is the Chicago Bulls.
Nice. James.
James Simmons, two hometowns, Houston, Texas, but my hometown is Schenectady, New York. Home of Pat Riley. We're not trading you, Jimmy. We don't do the people thing, so you got to deal with it, my man. Hotel management. I'm looking to get into transferring my hotel operations into sports operations. And I'm doing lots of youth things around the world as well, opening some camps, hopefully getting some young, I don't want to say underprivileged, but definitely kids in more poor countries. Hopefully, get them into schools in the U.S. so they can actually have more basketball programs, things like that. And I will be representing the Atlanta Hawks and the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Nice. All right, Abs. Good to see you, brother. What you got?
Hey everyone, my name is Ab Samantha. I live in Blacksburg, Virginia. I kind of took all the 4 classes last year, more to learn about basketball because I feel like my knowledge in the sport isn't as good as I thought it was. I mean, compared to like football or baseball or something like that. So that's why I'm glad that Mr. Ross recruited me to take these classes. And I mean, he was at me for a while. I just didn't have the time to spend until last year. And I'm going to be representing the Philadelphia 76ers. My dream job would be to be like a GM or something, or in an NBA front office, just to like because I'm really interested about like these like mock drafts or like making like these trade deadline stuff. So it was great to take these courses, like the training camp course, the summer league course, the draft course, of course, and then this one, the trade deadline course last year.
Awesome. Thanks, Abs. Good to see you, brother. Fraser.
Hi, everybody. I'm Fraser. I'm from Eastern Canada. I'm currently working with one of the universities down here in scouting and player development. And my dream job would be probably front office for the Raptors. I think that would be cool. And coincidentally, my team that I'm managing is also the Raptors for this course. So looking forward to it.
Love it. Have you and Mikey V connected?
I don't think we have actually. No.
No, Fraser, what school?
St. FX.
Oh, cool. Good stuff. I'm originally from Toronto.
Oh, no way. Right on, man.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, man.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Nice.
Jersey right here is Chris Boucher.
Hey, that's a good jersey to have. I like to see that one on the wall, man.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And I like the one next to it, Mikey V, the Philippines jersey.
I love the one next to it.
Nice. It's a special Michael Weisenberg jersey from the Philippines. So we got him and a couple other guys here on the roster. Jada, I don't know if you're on or not. Jada is one of our favorites. Oh, there she is. Jada, what's up?
Hi, I'm here. I guess let me turn my camera on. I've been like under the weather, so yeah.
Oh, good.
But
Good to see you.
I'm Jada. I am currently in, I guess you can say, Los Angeles, California. Also San Diego. Kind of weird. I forgot the questions already. I'm not gonna lie to you.
What's your dream job in basketball, and what team are you running?
I chose OKC, and dream job in basketball. You know, it's actually slightly changing. I have so much to tell you, John. But more of looking for a role in data analytics.
Nice.
But formerly or originally, I would say more in the admin side of basketball operations. So the role is like director of ball ops.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, we'll wrap it up there, but great to connect with you all. And yeah, the Slack is open. We got the Google Sheets. We'll send a list out of, the teams so you know what teams everyone's running, and feel free to start communicating, and like I said, at your own pace. I know some people are going to be able to be very active and some people aren't, and there's others who weren't able to be on the call tonight who are also going to be on there. But yeah, thanks again. You guys are welcome to take off. If you want to hang out for a bit, ask any questions, talk, you're welcome to. We usually just leave it open-ended for a bit. But that's it for tonight. And so next week it's next Tuesday and Wednesday. So we're doing 2 nights before the trade course. So Tuesday, similar-ish to tonight, where we'll have some speakers and everything, and then Wednesday it'll be more going over the trades you guys made, and having discussions about what everyone was thinking and why they made the moves they did, and we'll have a lot of class discussion with that. So that's the plan. All right, well, good to see you all. Like I said, if anyone has any questions or wants to throw anything out or just chat, you're more than welcome to. So Mikey V, I'll start with you. Mikey V, what's going on, man? What's happening in Portland?
Johnny, not too much. It's supposed to start raining like crazy. Are you coming in tomorrow?
Oh yeah, I actually almost
Yeah.
forgot. I fly back to Portland tomorrow. So
Okay, cool. Yeah,
I'll be,
you have a ride?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
My guy Brian has loaned me another car, which is nice. So
Oh
for
yeah.
those of you else on the call, I've been in Portland obviously for like, I don't know, 17 years, and then I just moved out to Nashville in October. My sisters both live here. one had a baby, the other's having a baby. I was like, I need to get out to Nashville, spend some time with the fam. So I kind of moved out here indefinitely. I still go to Portland, but I drove out to Nashville. It's it's a 3-4 day drive. So I fly back to Portland when I visit, but coming back to Portland for a few weeks. Got jury duty next week, so it kind of worked out since I'll be in town. They tried to get me on jury duty in November, and I was like, I deferred, and then they sent me another notice for February, and I was like, thank goodness I'm in town because I'm still an Oregon resident, so I need to show up for my civic duty. So anyway, I'll be back in Portland for a few weeks, and then come back to Nashville for a bit. So
Good stuff, man. Well, yeah, looking forward to seeing you, bud.
I'll see you at Well and Good soon.
Yes, sir. Let's do it. Hey, I guess Tuesday.
Yeah, probably Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep me posted. And yeah, definitely.
Oh no, Tuesday's jury duty. Never mind.
Oh yeah.
We'll figure it out. But
we'll definitely figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. For those on the call, also, you're always welcome to Portland. That's what I tell everyone. Me, Mikey V, Bjorn are there. Actually, I don't know if Michael reached out to you guys from Europe. He's coming to the Hoop Summit.
Mihao?
Yeah, Mihao.
Mihao Swish? Yeah.
He's coming to the Hoop Summit? He's coming to the Hoop Summit in April, so
Stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff with the team.
What's that?
Isn't he doing some stuff with the team?
He's doing stuff with Pro Insight.
Insight.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think he might be doing some consulting stuff for a Polish team too. Yeah.
Mikey, I wanted to ask you real quick. I saw that Pro Insight's doing like you guys were what, like you guys do now middle school too, like in some of like
I've been doing that middle school tournament for the last 3 years. Yeah.
Does that actually like garner, how does like what's has that garnered like views or clicks? Like what's the, I guess, the reach for that?
All right. Well,
I'm curious, genuinely.
Okay, yeah. Well, first off, they pay us money to cover it. So like
makes sense.
It's like a source of income for me. So
yeah, of course.
Like they pay for all my travel, lodging,
sweet deal.
That whole thing. And then we do content for it. And it's actually been really good because not only, first off, it's through Sports Academy, which used to be Mamba Academy for a while. Went back to being Sports Academy. Not only does it like get really like high level prospects, but then it also gets like occasionally like Alicia Keys and Swizz Beatz' son was playing last week.
Really?
Like, yeah. Egypt Dean, yeah. And then like we had this dad like retweet his son. I didn't even know his parents were famous. But like little guy, good at ball. And his dad was in B2K and his mom's on like Love and Hip Hop. So that was cool too. There were 2 players last year whose moms were on the cover of Playboy. That was interesting. But beyond that, as far as the actual like basketball nitty gritty,
evaluating
23 players in who were ranked in some fashion in the 2027 class, which is like where they're ranking right now. So that was my first year, was 2027. 23 players that had played in Sports Academy National Cup.
Oh, wow.
I had gotten stuff on every one of them. In the current 247 rankings that they just put out, there were 20 guys that were from that. So yeah, it's been like a really good early kind of look at some of these guys. Is
there anything you
kind of information
get from that at that young of an age, because like some of those guys are going to still grow or like radically change?
I mean, first off, it's like crazy evaluating, like, because I hadn't done any middle school stuff before this. Like the first time Matt told me about a middle school thing, I'd gone to one middle school thing before that Matt had told me about, and I was like, what the fuck are we doing? Like honestly, but yeah, like the thing I really like about it is that it's like the purest form of scouting. That I don't know anything about these guys most of the time. That lately I've of course, started to learn a lot more. But yeah, don't know much about them. Get to go in there and pick the ones that I like. And like I love like finding a new player that way. Like, you see a player for the first time and you're like, wow, like look at all the skills that this guy has. So yeah, that's been a cool part of it. It certainly has made things interesting. And yeah, they're gonna be like a handful of guys that go to the NBA. The one guy I point out is Bruce Branch III is currently like considered one of the better players in 2027. The first time I saw him, I thought he was great, but he was 6'2", and he was playing on a team with a guy who was 6'8" and another guy who was 6'7". They were more featured players at the time than him. His point guard was more of a featured player at the time than him. Well, Bruce ended up growing 4 inches, and it turns out he really improved his ball skills, and like I guess had the ball skills that I didn't even see at the time because of all these other players on his team. But he was somebody that I just thought was like intensely scalable and really skilled, but was somebody like I was like, I don't know how much he's going to grow. Like I thought his dad was only 6 feet tall. Then I found out his mom's like freaking huge. So yeah, like it just it has been interesting where guys kind of get better, and then you realize the middle school rankings don't matter for anything. They don't know anything about these kids. They don't know how much they don't know how much they love basketball. They don't know how much they're going to grow. It's like it's certainly something where you can't really predict everything going forward, and like there's a lot more variability to the level that they might be playing at. But like like there were guys like the first time I saw them, I'm like, that's like a future high major guy. And in middle school. Yeah.
Okay.
Like Will Conroy Jr. won MVP for me this past when I did. And like I saw him last year when he was 5'3" and knew he's gonna be a high major guy. Like he's an easy one because his dad, first off, he's built like a running back. Like he's built like Saquon Barkley. Like it's crazy. So super strong, really athletic, fantastic skill set. His dad played in the NBA. His dad is currently an assistant coach for USC. He was an assistant coach for Washington when I first saw him. But yeah, Will's like he's one of the special guys.
No, makes sense.
But yeah, like, and then there were like a handful of NBA guys. And we had Trevor Ariza watching his son. We had Katino Mobley watching his son. Lamar Odom was there. I don't know who he was watching, but I guess some kid. I'm not sure. Paul Pierce was just walking through the gym. That was really cool too. And he wanted to train his son there. And it just so happened the tournament was going on. So you have Paul Pierce walking around. Yeah, it's been cool, man. And yeah, just so that's the sunny side of covering middle school stuff. And
no, I'd been meaning
the downside
to
is
ask you.
watching middle school basketball.
Yeah, I can imagine. I like already like lament watching high school basketball more than I have to.
There are times Bjorn and I were at some of those Leschwall games where we're like, I remember arguing about getting dinner. First off, I was sick as a dog, but I remember arguing about getting dinner just because I was like, we need to skip this game. I do not want to watch this.
Oh, completely.
For my own mental health and physical health, I don't want to watch this game.
No, I get that. I think that like whenever I watch AAU or something, especially a team that like it's basically people are just playing for themselves, and it's just like and it's just a lot of shot chucking.
You can imagine that's even worse in middle school.
Like, yeah,
these guys are all
At least you have athleticism in AAU to make up for it. You'll get the occasional dunk or the big block. I can't imagine in middle school they have such.
Oh no, there are some that do.
Oh, I bet. It's a lot more far.
It's rare.
Between.
It's definitely more rare. But there was a kid from Bahamas who's 6'8", and he had like 4 or 5 dunks a game.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
No, but thank you for tonight. I gotta head out, but I just wanted to ask you guys that.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
you.
Good seeing you, man. Yeah,
likewise.
Yeah, great. Thanks for coming. Great question. Appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
I'll let's go probably see you then in Portsmouth because I'm heading to not Portsmouth, Portland and then Portsmouth because I'm going to Hoops Summit this year and then again
Nice, man.
Portsmouth. So
Yeah.
I'll catch up.
Well,
with
yeah,
you
yeah,
there.
definitely. We'll definitely link up in Portland. I'm hoping to go back to Portsmouth, but we'll see what happens.
Sounds good. And likewise, Bjorn with Hoop Summit, I'll hit you up.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. We'll see you there.
All right, see you guys
later. Abs, what's up, man?
Hey, so that last conversation actually made me think about a question that I wanted to ask, like an open-ended question, and then I had a specific question for you too, Mr. Ross.
Yeah.
So what happens to like what can coaching staffs like teach a player like from a young age, like if you know that they have the skills, but like you don't know if they'll have that growth spurt or not, but you know that like they have the like the skill set that could translate to like the pro level. How do you keep them like motivated through that the process? Like say that growth spurt never comes, but they still are a good player, just undersized or something like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, all that stuff is very interesting. A lot of, NBA is projections, where you're projecting players. So, I mean, the one blowing up right now is Amen Thompson from, the Rockets, where he was a raw athlete who didn't have a great skill set and couldn't shoot. And man, what I'm trying to think, 2 years, 3 years later, is it his third year?
His third year.
Third year,
No,
and just
second year. Second year.
all right, second year, and all of a sudden, he's elite. Like he might be, their franchise guy there. And so, heck of a job by the scouting team to identify that and take him. He's the kind of guy where you look back on the draft and he might have gone number 2. But that's, growth spurts. They don't often happen in the NBA. I think Giannis grew another couple inches. Kevin Durant keeps growing. Like there are guys who've kept growing in the NBA. A lot of those growth spurts. Mikey's expert on that because he works with those kids from middle school. But you see a lot of guys. One of my things with scouting is you see guys who are ranked first in their class. I feel like so often are like big guys in high school, and it's like, are they though? Are they just bigger than everyone else? But they're not going to be bigger in college and especially the pros. And that's where like the skill set comes in. Like to play in the NBA, you have to be skilled, you have to be intelligent. So yeah, all those things play a huge factor. And then for NBA teams, it's all about projections. Do you think this guy's going to grow? Do you think he's going to gain weight? Do you think, what's his body type? And you're just projecting what you think they're going to be. And then different teams, back to the risk reward, have different tolerances for how much they're going to like take that risk. And that's where like, I don't know, the Lakers getting Dalton Connect so late this year is like, he's a ready-made player. There's not a lot of up for him, but he can play right now. And so some teams, that's why he slipped, was because he does not projected as high as the other guys, but he's going to be better than 10 guys drafted in front of him. So yeah.
Well, and then Dalton, like the thing with we talked earlier about age, and like with Dalton, like the upside there might not be as great as somebody that you are kind of figuring might just figure it out, or has maybe some better tools and better athleticism, or something along those lines. As far as smaller guys, like I think Fred VanVleet had a really great way of putting it. Like guys who just aren't going to grow, who aren't like that. The thing I always say is I think there were like, this was from last year. There were 30 players in the NBA that were 6'2" or shorter. So that's out of 500 players. The odds aren't great, but I think something that Fred VanVleet said that I think applies to anybody that wants to make the NBA, and if they're not going to grow beyond that, is guard full court, shoot the shit out of it, be able to get to the basket, or like have some way of working with that, working the pick and roll, things along those lines. Like just like, and then I think those players typically, like, they have some kind of skill that is like otherworldly. Like that's what you're looking for if you're that size. So but yeah, like being that size, you either need to shoot the absolute shit out of it, be able to create events on defense, or just have a fantastic understanding of basketball and be able to, get offense and get your team involved. Yeah, that would be my advice to players that aren't going to grow. The one thing I'll push back with Ahmed and Johnny, I think he did have a really good skill set. He couldn't shoot. That was the thing. Like he was always a really good passer, had a really good handle, and of course his athleticism was like,
Yeah.
like otherworldly. Yeah. But yeah, the shooting, I think the shooting's still an issue, but it hasn't really affected him, and like, he's still playing this fantastic role for Houston.
Man, if he does, if he gets to shooting, like, man, he
Oh,
got top
like
5
one of the
players.
best players in the NBA. Yeah. No, he's so good, dude. Houston's a fun freaking team.
They are.
They're a really fun team.
They did such a good job the last few years of retooling.
Honestly. And do you guys want to know something too? Tons of draft Twitter guys in their front office. Tons. I was in a group chat, still kind of am, with some of the draft Twitter guys that guys that work in the NBA usually pull out of it. But my friend Cole Zwicker works for Houston. There was a guy named Ben Rubin who wrote for the Stepien. Javier Pesquera, who lives overseas. He works for Houston. And then Ross Homan, who was like really into grassroots, worked on the Stepien as well. All those guys are in Houston's front office right now. And like, yeah, Cole lives in Houston. My friend Cole lived in Seattle. He lives in Houston now. And like pretty much, Raphael Stone likes to have him by his side, like when they're going over anything.
That's great. Yeah. And my second question was I mean, getting the Game 101 has been such a great program, and like teaching all these, like even the basic basketball things, because like there were like the basic terms, like even pick and roll and all that stuff that I didn't know about beforehand. So like getting to learn all that stuff, getting to learn more about the specifics and individual stats, like a team, how they can like translate into like a team sport, not just like a one person team like rule or something like that. So I was wondering if there's a chance like that you could do something like this, or like if you know anyone who'd like to do this for like for other sports like baseball, football, hockey. It would be great.
I mean, I would love it. I would do the football one, but
oh yeah, Johnny.
do fantasy football.
I would definitely be able to help you with that one.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously it's not something I would start because I haven't had experience working professionally in any of those industries, but yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if that's out there with those sports or not, but I think there's definitely a market for it. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, NBA, they're popping up all over the place. There's a lot of them which I don't love because there's too much competition in this space. I'm like, but I think, I think our program is the best because our students actually get jobs in the
Yeah.
NBA and in basketball. And so I love seeing what's happening with, what we're doing here. But, as a business model, I don't know. I got to figure things out if it's sustainable. So because I
have
mean,
you searched for it, Abs? Like, have you looked for possible programs in baseball, hockey, anything like that?
Well, I mean, I haven't looked at it because I wasn't sure about it before. But then, I mean, having gone through like all 4 courses that Mr. Ross has, it just got me more interested because I was like, this is great. Like this, I mean, I didn't know that this kind of a thing was even out there before. Like I mean, I had no idea. It was just Mr. Ross DMing me on LinkedIn, and that's how I found out about these courses to begin with. So I'm like, I mean, it would be great for I'm sure there are people like me who out there who like to learn about this stuff, and they're in the sports that they like too. So I mean, yeah, I haven't actively looked, but it would be great to see if somebody else could create something like this. They have a
Yeah.
good role model here,
Yeah,
Mr.
let us know if you find someone. So
Yeah.
Sure.
all right. Well, I'm gonna get out of here, but James, also always good to see you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Good seeing you, James.
Likewise. We're gonna work on developing getting game 101. We talked about it before.
Yeah,
Develop that into other sports.
definitely. Definitely. Abs, good to see you, brother. And Mikey, I'll catch you soon.
Safe
Yeah.
travel, Johnny.
Let me see. I can't believe I have Jerry doing it Tuesday. I'll figure out. Maybe
Oh,
we can
good.
get
Yeah. We'll figure something out.
All right.
Yeah, you're here for a couple weeks, right?
Yeah, till
Nice.
like the 20th. So
Ooh.
a few weeks.
Nice.
All right. Later.
See you soon.